You ever go on like Discord and have a question about deck building? Maybe you're not that great at it. Maybe you're just new to a hero. And pretty much the answer you get is Git Gud Scrub. Well, that's what this is all about. We're here to Git Gud Scrub. It's a new segment with me, your boy Chonigman. And in this segment, I'm going to spend some time getting good. Maybe. TBD. We'll see. I don't really know yet, but that's the goal. The goal is to practice deck building and explore that a little bit more. I've never been very confident in it, and I've spent more time starting with someone else's kind of framework for a deck and then tuning it to my own play style, which I think is great. I think for most people that's what we have time to do, and with life being busy, you can't always spend time putting together a deck that ends up being so janky it makes you sad to play it and therefore ruins the time you spend playing the game you like. So I'm going to do that for you. I'm the guinea pig, and you're the scientist poking me with stuff. Hopefully friendly things, but we'll see. So in this segment, I will be checking in pretty often. We'll see how it goes about my progress. We're going to start with an idea. We're going to build out that idea into a deck, and we're going to try it out. We're going to run it into some different matchups. We're going to talk to the people we play against. We're going to solicit feedback from different friends and community members, and we'll see how it goes. I don't have the highest expectations, other than I hope that this is fun. I hope that it's a useful resource to explore the idea of how we all might get a little bit better at deck building. And if the very least, I hope it's entertaining for you to see me struggle with what's probably a grade A jank fest of a deck. So that being said, I lied a bit before. We already have an idea. We have the very rough-ish, not quite first draft, because I got a little antsy and tested it a little bit and have already made some changes, but still very rough deck. And the core idea is Transmogrify Illusionist. That's pretty much where we started, and that's what we're going for. We're looking at Transmogrify specifically, but also similar cards that are pretty much totally unused, and those would be Phantasmify and Veiled Intentions. The combination of these things that buff your cards to a ridiculous level, with the downside of giving them Phantasm. So to me, it is a little silly, it's a little combo-y, but I don't know. It seemed when I was going through my cards for Uprising, kept seeing Transmogrify, and just like making your attack base 8 is kind of nuts. And that's just the start. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to try it out, and we may just, edit it into just a normal Illusionist deck. So first step, or I guess first caveat, is we're going Dromai. I don't know if this is the best version of what this deck could be, simply because Luminaris is such a beast of a weapon, but with Prism being 2 points from Living Legend status, I don't want to spend a bunch of time building this deck and just have to scrap it later. So we're going in the harder route. We're looking at Dromai, and we're going to see where that takes us. So welcome to Git Gud Scrub. Also, before I forget, big shout out to homie Andrew Rudin for giving me this idea. I reached out to some locals to see what might be a good space for exploring deck building, and this was something he dropped in, and it was something I had kind of thought of too, as I said, while I was organizing my uprising, but definitely gave me a good little push there to get this going. So thanks, homie, and I hope we'll talk to him soon. Actually, I'm gonna bring him in. We'll talk because he's a great Illusionist player, and I'd love to hear his feedback on the jank that I have got brewing here. So okay, so here is my first very, very rough 80. You might immediately see that my loadout is trim. I am not thinking much about arcane damage or any other matchups. The bonus of Dromai being that my Ash Wings can become my arcane barrier, and that's pretty cool, but it just seemed harder to figure out what my equipment should be when I'm not quite sure how the deck will play yet. Obviously, Phantasmal Footsteps is a big one in this, since we are trying to make everything a big Phantasm attack, so likely it will get popped, and we need to use Footsteps to get our action point back, and this is the way it's going to be. We're going to use Phantasmal Footsteps to get our action point, and in the very rare occasion, block for one when we can, although resources are trim, as we'll see in a second. Kind of alongside of that, we have our Ghostly Touch. If we're expecting a lot of poppers, this seems like a cool way of going about, turning that into a late game advantage. If we can get 6 or 7 haunt counters on here, we can come in for a pretty big attack. So I don't know if it's good. It's a cool card. I'm excited about it, so we're trying it out. Flamescale Furnace blocks for 2. That's kind of what it's been so far. I think the activation 1 is really good if you just need to fix your hand, like turn 0 or any turn really, and you just need to pitch something bad to the bottom to set up a combo for later. Or if you do need the extra resources, it's just great at doing that. We will talk about it in a second, but with the kind of cost curve I've got going on, this doesn't feel like I need to activate this all that much, but every now and then I think it's really crucial. Crown of Providence, another block for 2, also can fix your hand or arsenal if you got something bad in there. And of course, Storm of Sandakai, because we do have some dragons. So let's just kind of look. I'll just give you a brief glance over the whole deck, and you might immediately see some interesting choices. All right, so going into the main deck, as I said, our big kind of thesis is Transmogrify, Phantasmify, and Veiled Intentions. All of these cost 1. Unfortunately, they all block for 2, and they all do something slightly different. Transmogrify Red makes your card Illusionist and has an 8 base attack and gains Phantasm. Phantasmify gives it +5 and also makes it Illusionist and gives it Phantasm. Veiled Intentions give it +4 Phantasm, Illusionist, and says when this is destroyed, draw a card. So these all are really interesting and work kind of together and individually in interesting ways that I've already found to be pretty cool and powerful. The bummer on these is that they cost 1. So we're running this red line deck with Dromai, so we don't have many resources to spare. So a lot of what I looked at were 0 and 1 cost attacks and action cards, so that we can pitch 1 to play one of these big boys, make an Ash, and then play a 0 cost attack after that. So a little bit of a Cheerios Briar situation, but not quite that oppressive or wild, but still some interesting stuff. So looking at our 0 cost, we've got the hedgehog. Just great. You're usually going to play a red card, especially if you hit one of our combo pieces. You're going to get it go again. That was another thing, is like 0 cost that could or have go again. Again, blocks for 2. You'll see that is one of the main downsides to this deck currently, but pretty powerful. Next up, and this is my favorite, I think, is Overload. Overload says dominate, and if Overload hits, it gains go again. So if you can Transmogrify this, it's coming in for 8 with dominate and go again. It does have Phantasm, but into certain decks, you know, they're not always going to have that popper, and you know, that's pretty sweet, especially if you can pitch that for late game after you've drawn out a lot of their poppers, which we'll talk about that in a second. So as silly as that sounds, it's pretty cool, and I feel like really exemplifies, you know, the power and usefulness of these 3 illusionist actions that just pump your damage pretty high. Alongside this, you'll see what else we got. All right, Vipox. This one, maybe it's janky, but it's also kind of cool. Again, in my mind, seems like you can set this up late game maybe and come in for, you know, 8, and if it hits, they lose, you know, possibly 4 more health. So 8 to 12 for 0 or 1, I guess, if you're playing one of these other cards, is pretty sweet. Again, always Phantasm is going to be the kind of Achilles heel here. Ravenous Rabble just seems good in this deck, and on its own, you know, cards like Ravenous Rabble and Blaze Headlong are good even if you don't have one of the combo pieces, at just kind of like going a little wide, pushing some damage, and maintaining a bit of tempo while you set up. We do have Belittle. Red Belittles, blue Minnowisms. This is just kind of because we have these low rate attacks to buff with our illusionist mogrifications. I'm just going to call them all Transmogrify for now. We have these cards in our hand that activate Belittle, and then we can fix our resources if we need to with Minnowism. I didn't run the red Minnowisms because it felt like too many non-attack actions, and that feels real bad when that's all you got in your hand and they all block for 2. So not great there. Billing Mirage, just a good illusionist card already. Can transform your Ash into Ash Wings. 3, so it works with Belittle. Cost 1, so, you know, a little harder to play. Same thing with Sweeping Blow. We have, you know, 3 in the red, 1 power in the blue. They create Ash. They kind of get that engine going, and also just go again attacks that can be pumped pretty easily by our Transmogrifications. Along with that, another big attack that I find great is the Doombreaker Senpai. This is mostly just to throw out there on its own. If you do Phantasmify it or Veiled Intentions it, definitely can be good, but then you're like double Phantasm, really doesn't matter. But you know, if you pop it, you've paid 2 for that, and that kind of sucks. But speaking of popping, we've got Frightmare. This whole deck is based on Phantasm, so we're expecting things to get popped, so having something like Frightmare is pretty nuts, and I think that's where Flamescale Furnace could be really powerful, in that you just get an extra resource for the things you've already pitched and come in for 13 after they've already popped something, which is pretty sweet. The other part of this that I think is going to be really important is Passing Mirage and Pierce Reality. I think if you can get 1 or 2 Pierce Realities out and then a Passing Mirage, everything you're coming in for is just gigantic. If you can do Transmogrify into any of your attacks, your base is now 12, and it's just pretty pretty nuts. You get a 12 overload dominate, and if you have passing mirage, it doesn't have phantasm. So this is where, if you can get your board state set up, it's pretty nuts. So how do we get our board state set up? Currently, the thought process is we use our dragons to draw out poppers. People are going to spend their turn attacking dragons. They're going to pop it, and we're going to bank on them doing that, and then set up our board state to have our Pierce Reality passing mirages so that we can just go to town with our transmogrification plan. So these, they're just good on their own, and we will use them to attack and they will do work, but they're also there to kind of take the fall and, give us a bit of breathing room and allow us to maintain at least an even tempo until we can start shoving this huge damage down their face. And then lastly, I think the big kind of thing here is semblance. In the case of not having a passing mirage out, we have a semblance that we can pitch and set up a big attack at the end of the game, hopefully with like an overload that's dominated, and they go to pop it and they can't, and that will be pretty sweet. So this is where we're at. If we look at our cost curve, we've got 35-0, 35-1 cost, and 5-3 costs. Then we have 58 red cards and 17 blues. I think eventually there probably will have to be consideration for different equipment. I'm thinking about Tunic as either a replacement or just an option. And then if we need to add actual Arcane Barrier that's not dependent on our Ashwings, we will see. We've also got Sigil of Solace, because that just seems like a good cheeky way of getting go again if you need it for your dragon attack turns. Some Sink Belows to deal with fixing our hands and setting up the bottom of our deck, and also just giving us some breathing room, allowing us to block better, because our deck does not block great. I think our average is closer to 2 block than 3, which is unfortunate. That's also, the dragons are good for their 3 blocks, so as much as that kind of sucks, that's where we're at, because we're running the weird deck here. So yeah, this is our Git Gud Scrub V1. We're calling it here V1. It's actually probably like V1.4, but that's fine. So there it is. We're going on this journey. I don't know how long it'll take. It's probably a lifelong journey we've started here together, so I'm excited you're here with me. If you have ideas, if you have thoughts, throw them in the comments. Hit me up on Twitter @TastyTown. I'll probably check it sometimes. Or check out our Discord. Join our Patreon, support the show so we can make more great content for you. And we got a really just wonderful community there. Lots of just nice people hanging out, sharing ideas, playing games, and doing a little happy hour every month or so. And yeah, love to see you there. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next one.